Good morning. Welcome to our Facebook Live, DACA Thriving Tuesdays. This is our last Facebook Live, and we are delighted that you're joining us. My name is Dr. Lisseth Rojas-Flores. I'm a psychologist and also an associate professor at the School of Psychology at Fuller Theological Seminary in Pasadena, California. Today, I'm joined by Norma. Norma, go ahead and introduce yourself again.
So my name is Norma Ramirez. I am currently a PhD candidate in clinical psychology at Fuller Theological Seminary. And I am also, I guess I was now one of the plaintiffs in the SCOTUS case that we won last week. And I'm also very happy that you're joining us today.
Yes, I see we're having to reshift now. All of us are given the decision from the court. But let me just mention that we are putting together these Facebook Lives with the support, the generous support from the Thrive Center for Human Development at Fuller Theological Seminary. This center is founded with the vision that all persons can thrive and be responsible and fulfill adults. And so together we have come to do this, to create this space to talk about the strengths and vulnerabilities of DACA and undocumented folks as we awaited for the decisions of the Supreme Court, which we finally had on Thursday with good news, but obviously with some uncertainties that we're going to be talking about. But I just want to remind you that there is a space with plenty of resources, mental health resources, in various forms, including webinars, podcasts, some writing, some blogs. But most importantly, our mental health resource that is focusing on embracing vulnerabilities and strengths, and particularly with the angle of mental health. We know that this journey has been uncertain and very anxiety-provoking, eliciting a number of very strong and mixed emotions that are hard to manage. And so we wanted to accompany you in this road with those tips. So if you go to our website, the Human Center for the Thrive Center for Human Development, you will be able to download the resource guide that we're talking about. We are asking you to do a little arts and crafts in your home. That means you have to download the front and the back of this resource guide, and then glue it together to form an accordion that you could actually fold and put in your pocket, have on your fingerprints, whenever you need to kind of pull that credit card and be reminded of one or two tips that can help you along the journey. We offer 9 tips, and we are now actually today going to be talking about the last 2 tips, especially because on Thursday we broke out of our cycle to rejoice, to celebrate the decision from the Supreme Court. So we're going to be talking today about this last 2 tips. But before we go into them, I think we need to pause, right, Norma, and talk about a little of the aftermath of the decision from the Supreme Court on Thursday. We're celebrating, but now we also proceeding with caution. Let me put it that way. Can you give us a little bit of update?
Yeah, so definitely on Thursday, that's when the decision came out that we won, and we basically won the whole thing. Apart from
won the whole thing. Can you be a little bit more specific? What do you mean by won the whole thing?
I'm getting there.
Sorry.
In terms of the argument that we had made in terms of arguing that DACA had been unlawfully taken away, there was also like another argument about it being basically a racist decision. And so on all those grounds, we won except the one being a racist decision. And so what that means is that DACA needs to be reinstated. It needs to, the full program. So accepting new applications and advanced parole. The question that we're holding now is seeing what the administration is going to do. They could still try to take it away now with even sort of a better way to take it away because of the ruling. But it's also not sure that that's going to happen. There was a tweet where I think the day after, Trump mentioned that he was that they were going to resubmit papers or whatever. And that's not necessarily how, that's not what the Supreme Court said. But we still have to wait.
You mean that the administration was going to submit some papers to counterattack the decision? Is that what you mean?
It's not clear exactly what he means. It's alluding to making moves to end the program. And so we still don't know. They still haven't said anything one way or the other or done anything. And so we still wait to see what this means for the future of DACA.
Right. So in some ways we're celebrating, but at the same time cautiously celebrating because we don't know exactly what's the next step. Precisely with the threat that the administration might come by and try to challenge the Supreme Court decision in some way or another, which we don't know how. Anything else that you have heard?
I just want to say that not everyone is celebrating, that there's mixed emotions coming up from the decision. So I just want to make sure that people don't hear us saying that you have to be celebrating. You have to be celebrating. There's a lot of mixed emotions about that. But I do think that there is something to celebrate in the fact that, people who don't have voting rights, who are very vulnerable, stood up to an unjust administration and won against all odds. Like nobody thought we were going to win. And so I think that piece, like that very, narrow piece of what this is worthy of celebration. But I understand also the implications outside of that.
Right. No, and that's what I mean about cautiously celebrating. And I think that the what we are planning to discuss today regarding dealing with strong and mixed emotions is very fitting to this situation in which we're in, right? It was fitting anyway for the long journey, because we know that long journey of waiting and having undocumented or DACA status is tough, and it evokes very strong and mixed emotions that at times tend to paralyze us. But now this uncertainty, this good news, and yet this it feels a little tantalizing in a sense, because it's now, we don't know what's going to proceed from here. Can evoke in some people, like you said, not the desire to celebrate, but much more despair and uncertainty. And so we're going to be talking about how to deal with strong emotions, moving forward with a vision for the future in the midst of these mixed messages that we're getting, that we continue to get. And I think you're right, Norma, because for marginalized communities, this is a big win that needs to be recognized, perhaps not celebrated in a big way, and that connotation is hard, but recognize and acknowledge and actually own, because I think for marginalized communities, the idea of gathering and voicing and concerns and advocating for themselves, and also having information, is very, very powerful. And we have seen the outcome of these efforts in the fact that the Supreme Court came up with this ruling. So that is a plus that I think we need to acknowledge and hold on to as we continue to move forward. But I think before we continue on talking more about this, let's stop here, and let's unless you have something else to add, Norma, about the date or anything that you have heard.
No, I do sort of want to nuance a little bit of what I mean with the mixed emotions. I think that even if there had been no tweet, the win itself brings up a lot of mixed emotions. you know, because your family doesn't have the same ability, or like immigration itself is so complex that it touches on so many things. And so that's all I want to nuance that with, is that
No,
even
yeah, yeah. No, thank you for clarifying that. That's a very important point, because we know a good number of folks live in mixed status families. This is not a DACA. The DACA ruling is not just about DACA. It has implications for all immigrants in our society here in the States. And thanks for clarifying that. That's a very important thing to clarify. Well, so why don't we just move on? We, as usual, have invited guests to help us unpack these tips that we're trying to share with you. And we had invited.
Oh, okay. Did it stop for everyone?
Yeah, I think she froze up.
Okay, so I'll continue. We had invited Monica Cornejo and Cecilia Sanchez to record previously on Thursday, but that's when the DACA decision came out. And so what we decided to do was just to process together what that decision meant. And you can find that also on the Facebook page. And so what we ended up doing is actually we met with them again to do what we had planned to do on Thursday, which was to talk about the mixed emotions piece of this, and also how to move forward in the future with or without DACA. And so if we could show the video, the recording, that would be great. So today we are happy to be back with Monica Cornejo and Cecilia Sanchez. And I'll let them introduce themselves. But, you know, they're with us on the day that the DACA announcement came out. And so feel free to take over that a video as we sort of process what this meant for us. And today we continue the conversation with looking forward to the future. So Monica, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Monica Cornejo. I'm a PhD student at the University of California at Santa Barbara in the Department of Communication. I'm very excited to be here, so thank you.
Hi, my name is Cecilia Sanchez. I live in Mexico City, and I am here because I worked for some years at consulates in the United States. I'm very glad to be here with you.
We are delighted to have you, Monica and Cecilia, joining Norma and I as we try to wrap up our DACA Thriving Tuesdays series. And today we are going to be focusing on how to move forward with a vision, and also how to maneuver through the strong mixed emotions that we might encounter, particularly as we just heard the Supreme Court decision. What do you guys have to say about those two topics?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with just a few thoughts that I've had right after the ruling, and what you were saying on kind of people and being empowered. And I think this, this decision did come because of the people. I don't think that without the activism from, undocumented immigrants, that the court would have ruled the way they are. I think that's important for us to know, because the government and the government system doesn't exist without people. So I think moving forward, I think it's important to keep that in mind, because as we continue to work towards making a bigger change and something more permanent, it's important for us to realize the power that we have as a collective.
And then to add to the complexity of it, we barely had like a day to really celebrate before there was that tweet that came out where Trump said that he was going to file papers or something like that, to end the program. So it's all of those feelings. For me, I want to say that when the decision happened, like I felt relief, and I started to feel like my body was like detoxing. It was like letting go of everything. And it was like I could start to feel like my shoulders again. That's what I've been telling people. Like, it's crazy that all this time, like I didn't realize how tense they were. And it was sort of moving in that direction. But then the moment that, you know, we start hearing all of these things of what could or may not happen with this administration, it sort of has this confusion, like, what do I do then? You know, am I still then holding and or do I allow myself to just like forget about this for the weekend before I have to pick it up again, you know? So all of these things I think are there and are very valid.
Well, I think that the part about mixed emotions is probably the one that's the hardest to grasp, considering that it is very easy to just fall into one or the other, but learning to be in the gray zone can be very complicated. I also remember a lot that I was invited to participate in this, thinking about the worst case scenario. Originally, when Norma invited me to participate here, her question for me was, what are the resources for Dreamers in Mexico in case Dreamers would decide to return given a bad decision? So I came into this thinking about the worst, because it's always helpful to have your worst case scenario and your best case scenario and prepare for all of them. So what I have to bring is the information on what happens if someone, for whichever reason, even though we had a really good ruling from the Supreme Court, ends up deciding that they want to return to Mexico. Because most of Dreamers are from Mexico, I don't have lots of information from other countries. So that's some information that I could share at some point if you would be interested. Just saying that this is because I do think that part of learning how to hold mixed emotions is understanding that you need to prepare for the best and for the worst at all times.
Yeah, no, I think for me, in the emotions, I think, you know, I definitely echo what Norma was saying, that, you know, on one side, you know, it's very rewarding, and it's also like that big sigh that I felt when the ruling came out, but it's that tension of like what's going to happen, you know, what's next. But I think for me, I think the emotion I was also, I don't even know if it's an emotion, but more like an understanding that citizenship, at least in this country, has always been something that's contested. So when we think about Native American, you know, African American and women too, white women who were, you know, the right to be in the country as people until much, much later. I think that's a reminder that, you know, that the idea of citizenship at a global level has to change because of all the negative impacts, but also because it doesn't really prove, or it doesn't justify somebody's placement being in a certain country. And I think for me, I think this is a good reminder that, you know, we have to work towards changing that and ensuring that, you know, generations to come aren't bound by this idea of a paper of citizenship. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's important. Just in addition to that, I think the idea of citizenship has, you know, become this trope that we all aspire to, but we forget that citizenship is tied to whiteness and white privilege. Mm. I think, especially among people of color and communities of color, I think we strive for this. And when we don't get it, we're like, why? You know, why I'm here? Why can't I this way? And I think that's when people become bitter and also go against their own community. So for example, I can think of like Latinos for Trump, right? After they get, like, people get citizenship, they go against their own communities. It's like, well, they want to be accepted, but not as citizens as white because of white privilege. Mm-hmm. Understanding that and understanding that it's never going to change so long as we don't understand the difference. I think unfortunately, even this win in the long run won't mean anything unless we start changing that narrative.
Yeah. And I think with that message is how we should think about our policies. And so I think if we go into planning for the future, because we're sort of thinking about that, underlying all of this. You know, we are hoping that DACA gets reinstated fully. That is what the Supreme Court ruled. And so it's we have to now wait for the administration to figure out what they're going to do. But we are hoping that new applicants for DACA are able to apply, and for advanced parole to be reinstated. And that is the full program. Because right now, currently, we only have DACA renewals. And so I think that is the most hopeful option that we have right now. And I think that is a great opportunity for those that couldn't apply, you know, because it ended. But we have so many young students, individuals who could apply for DACA now, you know, that just turned 15 or have turned 15 and so forth. But they never got the chance because it was rescinded. So I think that starts to just be a relief for people. And then with advanced parole, it opens up a lot of opportunity. And so I think that's the first piece that we can, that we are hoping is going to happen. And then from there, we have to figure out other options.
Yeah, definitely. I remember a lot that Norma and I actually met thanks to advanced parole. We met because there was this organization. It was a cluster of organizations that included the Mexican government. There was this organization called the U.S.-Mexico Foundation, which created a program that created a curriculum to invite dreamers into Mexico, to invite them to come to our country, to learn about our country, and also it gave them the opportunity to meet their family members here. And this program allowed them to get an advanced parole and to come to Mexico and be here for a week or so and learn about this country that they had not visited in 20 something years in some cases. Mm-hmm. So if advanced parole were to be reinstated, I would expect that this organization and many other organizations would start thinking also about reinstating these programs and making them work again for dreamers that want to come and visit their home country. This Mexico Foundation would probably be one of them, but I'm sure more opportunities would come up. If in some case people don't have a job opportunity or an education opportunity or even a humanitarian reason to come to Mexico, that could be very helpful. And one really good thing about that is that once you come to Mexico, you go back to the United States properly. You go through immigration, you send to your documents.
With a lawful entry.
A lawful entry, thank you. That's the wording. So you go in with a lawful entry, which can also be very helpful later on. So in case advanced parole were to be fully reinstated, the way it should be, that is something to keep in mind.
What other opportunities? I think we need to talk about opportunities, but also challenges, because they all tie together with our emotions. And so it's very important that we kind of ground ourselves in the reality, but also push against that reality that may look adverse with, okay, well, what is there that I can do? What is the opportunity? So let's talk about those challenges and at the same time the opportunities, some of the ones that you were mentioning, Cecilia. What for you are some of the challenges and opportunities that moving forward you see, Monica?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I think for me, the challenge moving forward is people are not seeing our humanity. I think continuing to prove that over and over again, as Norma mentioned earlier, right after not even a day, Trump tweeted, "Oh, we're going to go back and try to take it down again." So my initial emotion was, I cannot believe this is can't he just give us a day? You know, like, this is so frustrating. Why does it have to be like this? Why not have, like, why don't people understand that we're just trying to live a better future? And I think my second emotion was like, well, you know, if I have to go through the frustration of dealing with this, then at least he has to go through the frustration too. So he lost, so he has to go through that frustration. So that made me feel a little bit happier. And I think just, you know, working forward and seeing those positive things, that if I'm suffering, then you have to suffer too because you're the oppressor. That helps me. But so that's one of the challenges I struggle. But the opportunities, I think the opportunities with this is, you know, unlimited. I do think that we do have, you know, we definitely proven before that we do have strength, we are empowered, and just not losing that hope that if it's not in this country, it'll be in another country. We have transferable skills, even those among us who aren't highly educated. You know, we've always survived. People have always survived, and we will continue to survive. I think that's something to look forward to, at least for me.
I think to add on to kind of what Monica mentioned, I mean, I'm thinking about it in sort of like, what are the possibilities, right? So there's the one possibility of the program being reinstated, right? And then there's the other the possibility of going through what we just went through again, where maybe only renewals are available, or maybe the whole program is taken away. So I think when it comes to the whole program, like for me, it's a relief in the sense that I'll be able to finish internship, and I'll be able to renew again, you know, and when I had to apply for it, it was actually right as the Supreme Court hearing was happening. I had to apply to internships and wait to see if I matched, because it was a nationwide and U.S. and Canada programs. To see if I matched, because if I didn't match this year and DACA was taken away and I didn't have my work permit, then like, how would I be able to finish my schooling, my program?
Especially because internship is a requirement for you to be able to graduate and have your PhD.
Yes. And so because the way things are, you know, most of them, if not all of them, because you get paid, right? You need to have
Not much, but you do.
Work permit. But still, like, you need to have a work permit, right? And so that was on the line for me when I, you know, back, I think in February, you know, waiting to see if I matched. And so then, yes, I did. I matched, thankfully. And so it was like, okay, I know for sure that I have this much time to graduate. So I need to make sure I use that time. But now, you know, if, as we're hoping DACA continues fully, it means that I have the opportunity to graduate and begin, you know, my professional career as smoothly as I can without having citizenship. And so that in and of itself, it's a relief, because on the other hand, you know, if I graduate and I don't have a work permit, I can't work, you know, like what injustice is that, you know, that I would be a professional, a doctorate level professional, and still not have the right to work, to exercise that doctorate. And so for me, that's like the big thing that I feel is it's that relief. And that I could just leave things alone for a bit and really have the cognitive space and capacity to focus on the things that I need to focus on to graduate. The hard piece of it is how do we continue on? And I recognize that for me, because I'm in a situation where I will graduate and I will have a doctorate, my opportunities are different from people who maybe just in high school or maybe just starting college, you know, when the program is a threat, because I felt like I could pursue graduate school because I did have DACA. if I did not have DACA, I'm pretty sure that I wouldn't have pursued grad school. So with that, you know, I recognize all of those things and the complexity of that situation, without, you know, minimizing one or the other.
Right.
So I don't know if that answers the question, but something that I have to be thinking about consistently.
Right. Right.
When I applied to grad school, like it was back in 2014, like I thought the program was going to continue, like I'm going to renew 3 times and things are going to be fine. And, you know, that didn't happen. That did not happen at all. So I think that for people who see this, who are experiencing how fragile the program is, you know, the to take those next steps, to make those risks, I think are greater, or they're just more prevalent because I took a risk that I didn't know I was taking. And so that's I guess what I'm saying in that part, you know, and once I was in the program, like there's no judgment, I think, on what people decide. It's just think about it, you know, to be thoughtful about what you want, where you want to go, and recognizing that whatever you pick, it's probably not going to be easy, but that you have to pick it based on what speaks to you because you're going to be in it. And so I think that's what I would want to emphasize out of that.
What are some takeaways for folks like you, especially Monica, who have DACA status and are in this crossroads, you know, of excitement and feeling the excitement and the sense of future, but at the same time the uncertainty and feeling depleted in not knowing how to move forward? What would be a takeaway for somebody in that situation from your perspective that you want to communicate?
Yeah, I think what I would want to communicate is that existence is resistance, and just you being here and just moving forward for whatever it is already like sticking it to the man in that sort of sense. Already that, you know, we're winning. You know, I think especially as, you know, as we move forward and we're going to continue to be considered enemies of the state, just moving forward and being happy and finding happiness in small things, and knowing that you're worthy, even if you're not one of those, or one of us doctoral students, or one of those lawyers that we see. Just being you is huge. You're already winning. So I think not losing hope and keeping forward, and like Cecilia's song, that we each hold innate value.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope we're all hearing that. Cecilia, what do you want to say?
I am just amazed at how this fight brings out the best in people and the worst in other people, but how this fight has brought out the best in the undocumented community, and it's shown an immense amount of resilience and a strength in ties, a community strength that is so impressive, and that is exactly what's gonna keep on pushing everyone forward. Holding mixed emotions, holding hands together, and just moving on with what comes. It seemed like it was one thing some years ago. It seems very different today than it did yesterday, and it will keep on changing. But I can see how there's this resilience in the community, and it can just keep on going with good news and bad news, whichever they take them together.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Cecilia. Norma, what are some concluding thoughts? No pressure on you to make it memorable.
No, I mean, we're gonna continue, you know, and we're gonna, you know, if DACA is reinstated, that's gonna be a victory, and we're gonna keep fighting for the rest. You know, we're not forgetting everyone else. It's just nice to win something. You know, it's nice. And And yeah, like it's not over. But yeah, it's holding both the fact that we won against all odds and the fact that in a few days we'll pick it up again.
And yeah, I think you're right. And I think that I love to say that we won, but we won, you are keeping in mind other people that may not have the privilege of DACA, however limited it is. But also to be able to take in the enjoyment and the rejoice and the celebration of our community who is undocumented, who feel that this is a huge DACA, a huge win. I think that's very important. Just highlighting what Cecilia said, this is a community win. If one of our members wins, then everybody wins, and we keep inching forward, and we keep supporting each other along the path, and we keep encouraging each other to have a vision for the future that's full of hope and optimism and planning, but that is also aware of the adversity that we have to face, and to make plans for it, to self-care along the path, because that's extremely important. Otherwise, we don't make it to the end. So, ladies, thank you so much. You have been amazing inspiration to all of us, and tremendous examples, especially Monica and Norma, in keeping on the path in spite of how rocky and treacherous it can be, and moving forward with hope and faith and optimism for the future. And Cecilia, thank you for accompanying us in this journey in so many ways, and even from Mexico. I think that's fantastic. It speaks to the power of tools and opportunities that we have to communicate, to embrace our community beyond the borders. We are a community that definitely can move and have power beyond the borders. So thank you for highlighting that for us as well. Well, thank you again for joining us in this DACA Thriving Tuesday. This is our last series of our journey with you through Facebook Live, in which we're talking about moving forward with a vision for the future and dealing with mixed emotions. And you heard Monica Cornejo and you heard Cecilia Sanchez share some of the perspectives on this matter, as well as with Norma and I, as we try to make sense of the positive ruling from the Supreme Court, but also the uncertainty that's ahead. What are some of your takeaways on this, Norma? Just kind of summarizing the takeaways from that conversation with Monica and Cecilia, who eloquently talk about these issues.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the takeaway is that in order to move forward, we have to think of different options. With or without DACA, what do we do? Also, continue fighting, for better policy and change. And I think something that was underlying the whole thing was really owning our worth, to look beyond citizenship as a goal and really own the fact that we matter without citizenship or whatever our life situation is. And so I think those are the three main takeaways that I could identify from there. I'm sure there's more.
No, that's a great summary, because I think that, and what is striking me is that this envisioning ourselves in the future and dealing with mixed emotions in the way that they were talking about it, that we were talking about it, encapsulates in many ways the different tips that we were offering throughout our Facebook Live series, right? The 9 tips for mental health, for thriving, for moving forward. Because we were emphasizing that you have to own your worth. That we know that all undocumented journalists are not the same, but we all are special, and we have unique vulnerabilities, but also unique strengths. Very important that we need to embrace in this journey. And so this whole thing of being resilient in this journey, and that the journey does not stop. The journey continues. I mean, we're human beings, we're still alive. The journey will continue. as long as we're alive. But this emphasis, and I love the emphasis that Monica made on really, and that you made, Norma, is that we need to see our worth and embrace that worth as human beings, that it goes beyond immigration status or DACA, undocumented citizenship. It's who you are and your value and what you have to offer. And that oftentimes in marginalized communities, we tend to lose sight of our own worth because of so much oppression, because of so many barriers that we have to come to wrestle with on a daily basis. But we have to be centered on that, because that's what's going to help us project ourselves into the future, with a future, envision a future for a better future for ourselves, and for our families. And our immigrant families have done that, obviously, but we have to continue. The new generation had always have to continue to re-envision their future for their own future generations. And that involves planning. And it's hard to plan in uncertain times, but it has to be done. And when you plan, when you problem solve, you always come up with different options and not just one plan. Because if you do just one plan, you're setting yourself up for disappointment and potential failures. You have to kind of have multiple options in case one doesn't work. It's informed. It means that you have to do your little research. You have to consider multiple options. You have to be open-minded, but it gives you more range to plan. And Cecilia was mentioning some of these resources that she has for folks that might want to go back to Mexico in the event that they have to go, or just do certain things if things open up as things are as the procedures are getting more clear. Will get more clear after the decision as to whether DACA recipients can travel back to the original countries or not. But it also involves hope that things will change. The planning involves hope, right? That you have to push and see that you can affect change in like small little steps. I mean, I think, Norma, you and I started this with this idea, and we took little steps along the way, and we encountered barriers, right? We had another plan and it fell through, so then we have to regroup and plan, and then we have to modify our plan with the pandemic, and it's been a lot of kind of readjusting. But I'm proud to say that has been an example to me of being readjusting, but not losing sight of what we want to convey, because we know that information is powerful for our community. We know that gathering is important for our community, and we wanted to kind of contribute our 2 cents in the whole process. So yeah, I don't know. I said too much, but what do you think, Norma?
No, I mean, I think this could be a good time to, just highlight the different tips that we've talked about as a summary to what we've done in this month, and also to bring it back towards the future and how we keep moving forward.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Because let's remind him. Can you remind him what we have on the website, and then we'll go through the tips.
So if you go to the website from the Thrive Center, which is right there on the chat, you'll see, the first thing you see is multidimensional identities of the 1.5 undocumented immigration, right? So we're not using DACA or another way of naming people, because it doesn't incorporate everyone, of this generation that we're talking about. And so that's the 1.5 undocumented generation. And then you see that we are thinking about this multidimensionally, that with legal status, we're talking about mental health, or migration history, gender, culture, sexual identity, ability status, caring relationships, and many other things that affect how our legal status impacts our lives and how we navigate it. And then you'll see a video of Lisseth and I back in November at the Supreme Court, where we are introducing these tips for you. And below that, there's the actual accordion, which you can print the front and back, and then you glue them together and cut them, and you make your little accordion.
That's a cards project for when you're in quarantine.
Yes. And they're really to serve as reminders for then the videos that we've been having. So you scroll down and you see DACA Thriving Tuesdays. The one that's highlighted is the video that we did on the SCOTUS ruling. But after that, you see how we've been going throughout this process, the introduction to and pushing against unhelpful thoughts. And when you click watch here, it takes you to the video. And underneath the video, there's additional resources. So please make sure to click on there, go through the resources, because they're intended to supplement what we're talking about and to really help you develop your own practices as you move forward. Like, this isn't something that you just use once or that you use when you're in crises, but they're intended to keep you constantly sort of like watering a plant, right? You're constantly watering yourself so that you grow and you flourish. And so that's the idea that we're trying to do and why they're here. And we just want to also remind you that we are going to be updating the website. Something that is super, super cool and important is that myself and other people from the National Latinx Psychological Association, other research, or I don't know how to say it, but also in collaboration with APA.
APA, American Psychological Association.
Yes, United We Dream, and these other organizations, or members of these other organizations, are working together to create a directory of pro bono or low-cost therapists, and really building competency to work with our population. So once that directory is available, we will also share it on the website. So that way you not only are working to take care of yourself, but then you could also have access to a therapist, which is so needed.
Right. Thank you, Norma, for highlighting what we have available. And let's go through the steps, because I think one of the, and you mentioned this already, Norma, that one of the messages that we want to convey is, in terms of the long journey, you have to create habits that are going to help you move along, support your journey, and practice creates habits, and habits of self-care are extremely important in this journey. Habits of affirming your worth, habits of reaching out to your community, habits of embracing the strengths and vulnerabilities, your own personal strengths and vulnerabilities, but also those of the community, are extremely important in helping you not lose sight of that ultimate goal, right, in this journey, not lose sight of what you're aiming for in the future. So let's go through this. Let's create the habits, but let's just go through some of the tips. The first one that we have for you that we discussed is this idea of pushing back against unhelpful thoughts. And departing from the knowledge that we have is that thoughts influence how we feel and how we behave. And so we need to recognize and we need to challenge intentionally any unhelpful thoughts that sometimes come into our minds, that is very real because of the realities that we live in, and that if we could intentionally challenge those thoughts, we can actually calm ourselves in moments of distress. That's one of the takeaways that we want you to take with you moving forward at this moment in time. Do you want to add any more to that, Norma?
Only that it helps us create self-awareness. It helps us to move away from this sort of survival mode and like autopilot mode that sometimes we find ourselves in because of our circumstances. This is a way in which we can start to notice our thoughts, notice our bodies, how we feel, and really take back our agency. And then we can take steps to think more clearly about what is in front of us and where we want to go.
Very good point. No, thank you for mentioning that. The other tip that we have for you is a challenge to encourage you to care for your physical health, because we know that chronic stress can tax your health, and you have to be intentional about prioritizing your health. We're not just talking about mental health as a separate domain. We are holistic beings where our mind, our soul, our physical being is all intertwined and part of one holistic being. And so we encourage you to intentionally seek out and look after your physical health. And, you know, the usual, you hear people letting you know you have to exercise, you have to eat well. Yes, we want you to continue to do all those kinds of things, because those are good habits of self-care and especially physical health. But we want you to also push the envelope a little bit more and emphasize that you need to do preventive care, seek preventive medical health. We know there are barriers, and we acknowledge that in our Facebook Live, the first one when we did on this topic. We recognize that the community encounters many barriers in accessing care and good quality care, but you have to push against those barriers and demand the proper care and dignity in accessing medical services. What else do you want to add to that, Norma?
I mean, honestly, it's so important. We know that there are barriers to accessing that physical health care, but it doesn't mean that they're not available. So please continue looking. We provided some resources to help get that started, and you know, really get someone who will, you know, remind you and who will push you to do so. I had to do that with myself. I had to get a friend who could help me navigate insurance and who would help me call, honestly. And after that, you know, now I can do it myself. But it takes time when we haven't had that experience, and when, I don't know, to me, all the systemic things sort of come up, and it's challenging, you know, the ideas that I don't deserve it or I can't have access to these things.
Yeah, very good point. And I think you notice that we started with you. You have to refuel to continue the journey. Many of you are avid advocates out there in the community. Others of you are doing many things within your, fighting for rights and supporting your families. And so you need to first refuel, because you're carrying a lot on your shoulders. And one of them is taking care of your physical health and taking care of your mental health in order to move forward. So let's move on to the next two tips, which were, and you are able to find this Facebook Live discussion on the website. But we talked about, one of the tips was about engaging your community. In the message that we wanted to convey was to engage and uplift your community with your talents and your passions, because healing happens in community. And we recognize that it's not just asking you to be an advocate, because, you know, that is good if you want to do that, but that's not the only way to engage your community, that there are multiple ways to engage your community, and that you have to be clever and also very intentional about expanding your network of support, but at the same time for your own self, but also for in behalf of others in your community. We had some good examples of that on the website. But what else do you want to add to that message that we wanted to convey, Norma?
I mean, really joining some kind of aspect of the community is really helpful, because that's how you start to meet people who are like you, who have similar ideas, similar interests, goals. For me, as an introvert who doesn't really go towards people very naturally, the best way that I was able to build long-lasting relationships was by volunteering and being a part of the community. And this was way back in 2008. and still those people are still with me and are still supporting me, and they're the ones that, you know, are continuously in my life. So that's something, that's a way that we could continue to not the mutuality of the situation, where it's for you, it's for your community, and it's for everyone.
Yes, very good point. And we are relational beings. That's one of the things we highlighted along the way, is that we are essentially social beings, and we need to be in relationship with others. Clearly, the pandemic and having to shelter in place have challenged our ability to be closer to one another physically, but there are other ways to be connected, to gather, to support one another, and to exchange information and to affirm one another along this journey. So thank you for highlighting that, Norma. Now let's move on to the other one. The other tip that we proposed, and well, that we are highlighting, and that we want you to think about and reflect on, it's about letting go of survival guilt. And I think this is a topic that oftentimes is not addressed, but that we often hear from DACA recipients particularly. And I'm going to be more specific about DACA recipients because they have enjoyed access to certain resources that perhaps the undocumented community has not been able to, especially when we're talking about mixed status families, and recognizing that even within that family, the DACA recipient might be the only one that can actually get a job and get a license and all kinds of other privilege that come with that, and that survival guilt sometimes can come along with imposter syndrome, meaning that you question your worth, and those feelings can actually drag you down, and that we need to recognize that is very, very real. And that we need to unpack those feelings and unload them frequently. This ties up with pushing them against unhelpful thoughts, but also intentionally recognizing that tendency, that guilt, that and imposter syndrome that oftentimes comes with having this DACA status. What do you have to say to that, Norma?
I think, you know, this is what we really emphasize, that you matter, that ideally this should not be happening. You shouldn't have to be sort of split from what is beneficial to you and what is beneficial to your loved ones. And so in this situation, we emphasize that the difficulty in this, it's not your fault. It is a systemic issue, and owning that you matter, that you are worth it, that you deserve all the benefits that come with having DACA, and really moving forward to make sure that other people have those same privileges and benefits. And like I said, you know, ultimately we need better policies, but this is sort of where you own your worth.
Very good point. Yes. Other words, and even if you have these mixed emotions, reach out to somebody else to help you, remind you of your worth, and remind you of the contributions you're making to others as well. If you get caught up in that. The other tip that we presented was about nurturing your creativity, and we really believe that we all have creative potential, amazing creative potential. But when we think about creativity, we often can think of our artistic abilities, and that's not what we are emphasizing, because, you know, I'm a little creative, but not quite artistic. But that we can express our creativity in unique ways that can affirm our strengths. And the strengths of our community, and that with creativity, we also can bypass obstacles and move forward in many ways. Like I mentioned before, Norma and I, with this DACA Thriving Tuesdays and our website, we have had many plans that we have to shift and pivot multiple times to get to the message that we want to convey, and we have, with creativity and a lot of endurance and perseverance. But creativity was one of the keys in being able to, like, okay, that didn't work. Let's imagine something else. Let's move forward here. Let's circumvent that barrier in one way or another. And this is a long journey. This undocumented journey is long, with many barriers, many challenges, a lot of frustration, a lot of setbacks. But we have seen in our community the amazing creative ways in which folks are moving forward. So we wanted to remind you of that dig deep, to dig deep and tap into that creative aspect of yourself. Anything else, Norma?
Yeah, as you were talking, I think another way we could talk about this is through flexibility.
That's a good point. Yes.
To be flexible, to modify and accommodate our circumstances. It is very difficult to do because when things don't work out, there's an impact that we have to process. But this is sort of where it'll, again, everything touches on each other. You're able to, pay attention to yourself, push back against unhealthy thoughts, acknowledge your worth, and then find a way to move forward. And so we have great examples that are artistic. We have poets, we have writers, authors, we have people pursuing higher education, graduate school. We have people creating their own online stores. I mean, the possibilities are endless, really. And so it's just a matter of where you want to go, what is important to you, and how you want to get there.
Yeah. Thank you. And one other one that another tip that we offer is regarding healthy relationships. And we recognize that we intentionally have to seek and maintain healthy relationships, and that we have to be open to seeking those relationships, and to actually be very active in nurturing healthy relationships along the way, because we are relational beings, because we need community to move forward. And we recognize that in the documented journey, especially in an immigrant climate in which we live in, it's very hard sometimes to allow others to come into our lives, because we are always kind of trying to fill in the way, and a little bit uncertain as to why people are coming into our lives. And perhaps our flags are up a little bit more. And so we talked about healthy relationships and some of the green and red flags in seeking those relationships. What do you want to share about that? And remember, I just want to remind people that we have discussed this a little bit more in our Facebook Live in the
website.
And the website. Yes, I'm sorry. In the website, we have a discussion about it. But what do you have to add as a takeaway for this particular tip, Norma?
Yeah, I mean, this is one that I feel very strongly about. There's no way that I could have done, all the things that I have been able to do and achieve without the support of so many people. And it's so important for ourselves, when we experience any kind of distress or trauma, it happens through relationship, but it also, healing comes through relationships. And so it's so important that we make an effort to maintain those, to seek out people who will be good for us, right? And to be able to keep them up, even when sometimes we want to isolate and we want to forget the world. Those are real, and there's space to do that, but we can't forget that we need to come back and connect.
Yes. And let me just mention the other one, because that we haven't discussed so far, and it's embracing your faith and spirituality. We wanted you to really tap into your spiritual, religious, or mindfulness practices to ground yourself and expand your ability to cope with stress and disappointment, but to also expand your positive coping in times of difficulties, but in times of joy, in good times, basically. We did talk about this last week on our previous DACA Tuesday, and so we encourage you to see it there. But again, this is another strength that is inherent in our immigrant community, and emphasizing the idea that practice really creates habits, and part of the tapping into your mindfulness or your spiritual practices are ways of refueling constantly in a journey that oftentimes tends to deplete our tank. What do you have to say, Norma?
I mean, for me, my faith has been super important. It has been why I took the risk to go to grad school. It's why I took the risk in joining the lawsuit. It's something that I felt that God was calling me to do, and also something that has been very supportive for me. So it's important to connect with our cultural history, our practices, and use them, to continue moving forward as support but yeah, so it's connecting with our cultural, spiritual practices for our overall well-being.
So you see, we have already gone through 7 of them. At least summarizing 7 of them that we have previously discussed. And from the interview that you just watched today, we discussed moving forward with the vision for the future, and also dealing with strong and mixed emotions. And I think what you see is a running thread here, right? That all of them are tied together. All of them are part and parcel of being resilient, meaning having really fostering and nurturing that capacity to be able to bounce back from easily or in times of distress, and not just bounce back quickly from difficulties, but to also be enriched and grow out of in during times of adversity. And so that's the essence of what we want to communicate here. You're worthy, you have worth, embrace that value that you have, know your worth, dig deep on that, and reach out to others in your community who have much to offer, much to give to you. And we be reminded that you also have a lot to give to others as well. And that you're more than your immigration status. We have multidimensional aspects of ourselves that we need to embrace. We all have unique gifts and talents, and we all have different journeys, but essentially we're all human beings with a lot of worth that we want to make sure that we recognize, and that we shield ourselves, and that we also protect ourselves in the midst of an anti-immigrant climate. I'm sorry. I know we're running a little late, and maybe we're also getting a little time tight here. So we're going to wrap soon, but we do want to emphasize that these takeaways are that we're trying to communicate to you are a labor of love, because we know that the journey is long, the journey continues even after this positive response from the Supreme Court. We are aware that there's still much uncertainty, that there's still much to do for undocumented community, but with our expertise in psychology, we think that some of these tips can be helpful to you, and we hope to continue to be adding more resources on our website that you can tap and you can expand and be aware of what's going on. We're going to wrap up soon, Norma, but what are some final comments here that you have, especially as a DACA recipient in this process, that folks can take away with it?
Yeah, I mean, I am very thankful that we have been able to do this. Thank you to you for listening to what I was saying, and really coming with me to do this, and obviously to the Thrive Center, who then came together to have us support this project, which is so important and so needed. And as a DACA recipient, someone who's impacted, it's so important that it is our voices that are being heard, that we are the ones guiding the conversation. And yeah, this is something I've wanted to do since, I started grad school. So I'm super thankful that we got to do this.
Thank you. And thank you for the courage, Norma, to do this, because again, I keep on emphasizing the strength of our community, the power of our community. A lot of power comes from information gathering, and you have encouraged us to provide information, to gather folks, to rally around and to shift the narrative. I mean, that shifting of the narrative of, you have to be a deserving immigrant in order to get citizenship or DACA status is not what we want to convey. We are saying you are worth it, regardless of your immigration status. You have value. We appreciate your multidimensional aspects of yourself, and we want you to embrace it, and we want you to nurture it and take care of yourself so that you can take care of others and the next generation along the way. So thank you for giving us that challenge, Norma, and for being courageous enough to raise your voice so that others can join us and continue the fight. We are living very unparalleled times at this moment in time. We have a convergence of the health crisis with the COVID-19 pandemic. We have a civil rights unrest because of the racial issues that we have been dealing with for so many years. We have an economic crisis, and obviously we have this immigration crisis that has also been going on for so long, and they are sort of converging at a national level, but it's interesting, it's also at a global level. So with this crisis, I mean, there's also the creative potential for hope and vision at the same time, but it pushes us in multiple ways to move and to fully acknowledge and to give space for mixed, very strong emotions of grief, of sadness, of lament, of anger, or whatever feelings. But it also moves us to recognize that there is hope, that that we can envision ourselves in a better future. And we have had a good encouragement from the Supreme Court with the positive ruling against the acts, like you mentioned, Norma. And so we are encouraging you to really dig deep in these times of travel and uncertainty and be grounded in the messages that you're worth it. We are a strong community. We have much to say, and we need to, and we have a lot to offer. So I think we're going to wrap up, and I'm going to leave the last memorable words to you, Norma. But that again is, I want to thank you all for joining us through this journey. We try to convey it as much as we can. We'll keep adding resources to the website, so keep on checking us. And if something opens, something comes up, we might come back on Facebook Live. But for the time being, check out resources online. But I'm going to let Norma, our courageous DACA recipient, be the one closing our Facebook Live series. And thank you again.
Okay. So I think I just want to emphasize that in a situation where we are with oppressive systems where the goal is to tear us down, the most subversive form of resistance, which is quiet and that people may not see, is to take care of ourselves, to be joyful, to find the beautiful things in life, and to persist for our well-being. And so that is what we hope ultimately that these resources will help you with. And please reach out if something doesn't make sense. Truly, truly, we love you, and we are in it together. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.